Zaley's pulse thundered in her ears as the bright lights of the grand ballroom in downtown Manhattan blinded her momentarily. Her father, Richard Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Enterprises, had just called her name with that signature smirk that promised humiliation rather than pride. "Come on up, Zaley," he said into the mic, his voice echoing through the packed room of shareholders and executives. "Let's give everyone a laugh about how my little girl has been finding herself all these years." The crowd tittered, expecting the usual jab at her sexuality that he'd been using behind closed doors to pressure her into changing for the sake of the family image and the company's conservative investor base. But Zaley wasn't the same scared woman who'd hidden her relationship with Laura for fear of being disowned. She walked up the steps, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor, and before he could continue his scripted embarrassment, she snatched the microphone from his hand. "Thanks, Dad, but if we're talking truths tonight, let's skip the jokes and get to the real news. I've secured a full acquisition deal with Vanguard Innovations, and they're taking over Harrington Enterprises as of this moment, complete with all the evidence of your creative accounting that Laura and I have documented for the board." The room gasped, cameras flashed, and Richard's face turned ashen, his empire crumbling in one bold move. Whispers exploded into shouts as board members checked their phones and reporters surged forward. Zaley felt the weight of every Sunday dinner where her father had lectured her about choosing the right path, and how her mother had cried in private about the family name being ruined. She had weighed the costs for months, the inheritance, the legacy, the approval she once craved. But Laura's quiet strength in their small Brooklyn apartment had tipped the scale. "This isn't revenge," Zaley had told herself the night they finalized the papers. "This is survival." Now, standing there with the mic still warm in her grip, she saw the price beginning to unfold in her father's eyes. Security tried to escort her off, but she held her ground, scanning the crowd for Laura's face in the back. Laura stood tall in her simple black dress, her dark hair pulled back, giving Zaley the smallest nod that said everything. "We've got this." Richard lunged for the mic, sputtering. "This is a lie, a family matter blown out of proportion." But the damage was done. Investors were already dialing lawyers. Zaley stepped down from the stage amid the chaos, her heart racing not with fear but with a terrifying clarity. She had just burned the bridge she once thought she needed to survive, and the flames felt strangely liberating. As she pushed through the crowd toward the exit, hands reached out, some congratulating, most condemning, and she realized the real battle was only starting. Laura met her at the door, slipping an arm around her waist in that quiet protective way that had kept Zaley sane through years of silent dinners and veiled threats. "You did it," Laura whispered. "Now we face what comes next." They drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past, Zaley replaying the moment her father's smirk had shattered. She knew the calls would come, the accusations of betrayal, the pressure from every corner of their elite circle where being lesbian still meant whispers and lost invitations. But for the first time the decision felt like hers alone, not dictated by the man who had tried to turn her identity into a punchline. The apartment door clicked shut behind them, and Zaley sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. Laura brewed tea without asking, the way she always did when words failed. "He'll come for us tomorrow," Zaley said finally. "The company, the family, everything." Laura sat beside her, their fingers intertwining. "Then we fight smarter. You've already paid the first price. Now we decide if it's worth the rest." Zaley closed her eyes, the weight of the choice settling deeper. She had traded safety for truth, and the city outside felt both freer and colder than ever. The next morning the doorbell rang before the sun fully rose over Brooklyn. Zaley opened it to find her mother, Elaine, standing there with red-rimmed eyes and a folder clutched like a shield. "Your father is in the hospital from the stress you caused," Elaine said, voice cracking as she pushed inside. "How could you do this to us, Zaley? After everything we've given you." The words hit like the stage lights had the night before, but Zaley didn't flinch. She led her mother to the kitchen where Laura was already pouring coffee, her presence steady and unapologetic. "Mom, he invited me up there to mock me in front of everyone who matters to him. That wasn't love, that was control." Elaine's hands trembled as she set the folder down. It contained the original will, the one that had been rewritten last year to exclude Zaley unless she straightened out. He was trying to protect the company image. Investors pull out when they hear rumors about the CEO's daughter being, you know, The word lesbian hung unspoken, heavy as always in their conversations. Zaylee felt the old shame rise, the nights she cried in college dorms wondering if she was broken because her family said so. Laura stepped forward quietly. "Mrs. Harrington, we didn't start this war. Your husband did when he chose public humiliation over acceptance." Elaine turned on Laura, eyes narrowing. You've turned her against us." Filled her head with these ideas that tore our family apart. Zaylee's chest tightened at the familiar blame game. She remembered the Christmas when her father had introduced a suitable male colleague as her date, ignoring her protests until she left in tears. Laura had been the one to pick her up that night, no questions asked. "I chose this," Zaylee said firmly. "Laura didn't make me gay. She just made me brave enough to stop hiding." The argument stretched for hours. Elaine listed every sacrifice: the private schools, the debutante balls, the trust fund now frozen, while Zaylee countered with the nights she'd contemplated ending it all under the weight of their disappointment. Richard called midway through, voice hoarse from the ER. "Come to the office and fix this mess you made, or don't bother calling yourself my daughter anymore." Zaylee hung up without answering, the finality stinging more than she expected. Elaine left in tears, warning that the board was already meeting to vote her out of any remaining shares. Alone again, Zaylee paced the living room, the price of her stand crystallizing. She had lost the last thread of approval, the one she'd clung to despite knowing it was toxic. Laura watched from the doorway, her own eyes reflecting the exhaustion of loving someone through this storm. "You don't have to carry their guilt," Laura said softly. "But if we push the merger through, your family might never forgive you." Zaylee stopped pacing and pulled Laura close, the embrace grounding her. "I already forgave them years ago for not loving me as I am. Now it's their turn to live with what they chose." Outside, New York buzzed indifferently, but inside their apartment the air felt charged with the irreversible step they had taken. Zaylee knew the social fallout was next: the texts from cousins, the canceled lunches with old friends who suddenly remembered family values. Yet in Laura's steady gaze she found the one truth that made the trade-off bearable. She was finally choosing herself without apology. By Monday the headlines screamed across every business feed: "Harrington heiress stages corporate coup at gala." Zaylee's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from former colleagues at the company, some calling her a hero for exposing the accounting issues, most labeling her a traitor who had airlifted the family legacy. She arrived at the office anyway, determined to see the transition through, only to find security waiting in the lobby. "Mr. Harrington's orders," the guard said, not meeting her eyes. "Your access is revoked pending board review." The humiliation burned fresh, echoing the stage but now without the spotlight to hide behind. She stood there in her tailored blazer, the same one she'd worn to prove she belonged, while employees whispered behind glass walls. Laura waited outside in the car, but Zaylee needed to face this alone. Upstairs in the executive suite, Richard sat at the head of the table, face pale but voice steel. "You think exposing a few irregularities gives you the right to sell us out? Those were strategic adjustments every CEO makes." Zaylee met his stare across the room, the moral line she had crossed now a chasm. Strategic adjustments that hid millions from taxes and shortchanged employees' pensions. Laura found the patterns. "I chose to act." The board members shifted uncomfortably, the prejudice thick in the air. Several had made offhand comments over the years about diversity hires that never included someone like her. One older investor cleared his throat. "This isn't about the numbers, Zaylee. It's about loyalty. Your lifestyle already made things awkward. Now this." The word lifestyle landed like a slap, reducing years of quiet love with Laura to something inconvenient. Zaylee felt the old inner conflict surge. The voice that once whispered maybe they were right, maybe she should have stayed silent for peace. But she remembered the nights Laura had held her after family rejections, the way their shared apartment had become the only safe space. Loyalty to what? A company built on secrets and a family that only loved the version of me that didn't exist. She left the meeting without a seat at the table, the doors closing behind her with finality. Outside, the city sidewalks felt narrower as old friends crossed the street to avoid her. A text from her college roommate popped up. "I supported you coming out, but destroying your dad? That's too far." Zaylee deleted it, the isolation closing in. Back in the car, Laura took her hand without speaking. driving them to their favorite quiet cafe where no one knew their names. There, over cooling lattes, Zaley voiced the doubt that had grown overnight. Did I trade my entire world for one moment of justice? People I grew up with now look at me like I'm the villain. Laura's voice stayed even. The price of visibility is always higher for us. But you didn't just expose fraud. You refused to let them shame you into silence. Still, the societal weight pressed down. That evening a protest formed outside their building. Conservative groups who'd latched onto the story as proof that activist agendas ruined businesses. Zaley watched from the window, heart heavy with the realization that her personal stand had become public ammunition. The moral gray area loomed larger. She had protected employees from shady practices, yet fractured her own family beyond repair. Laura cooked dinner in silence, the clatter of pans the only sound until Zaley finally spoke. I don't regret the truth, but I hate that the cost keeps rising. They ate facing each other, the bond between them the only constant in the storm. Yet Zaley wondered how long love could withstand the external siege. The strain between Zaley and Laura surfaced quietly at first, like cracks in a foundation no one wanted to name. After the board vote confirmed the Vanguard acquisition, they celebrated with takeout on the couch, but the joy felt hollow. Laura set her fork down midway. I love you for fighting back, but this deal, it wasn't just business. You used every contact I gave you, every late night we spent reviewing files. What if the evidence wasn't as clean as we thought? Zaley stared at her plate, the moral dilemma she'd buried now rising. We double-checked everything. The irregularities were real. Yet doubt flickered. Had she crossed into manipulation, the same kind her father had always wielded? Laura's eyes held worry, not accusation. Your family is bleeding, Zaley. Your mom called me yesterday begging me to talk sense into you. I hung up, but it stayed with me. Are we the heroes or just the ones who won? The question echoed Zaley's sleepless nights. She flashed back to the gala, the way she'd felt powerful seizing the mic, but now saw the collateral. Her younger cousin's college fund tied to company stock now tanking, friends losing jobs in the restructuring. I chose us, she said, reaching for Laura's hand. But sometimes I wonder if love gave me permission to burn everything else. Their conversation stretched late, peeling back layers neither had fully voiced. Laura admitted the pressure of being the outside influence, the Asian American consultant who'd never been welcomed at family events. Zaley confessed the fear that without the family name she had nothing left but their relationship. And what if that wasn't enough? They argued gently, voices never rising. But the tension built until Laura stood. If this deal destroys you inside, we can still walk it back somehow. Zaley shook her head. No. I won't go back to hiding. The next day brought more fallout. A tabloid piece framed their relationship as the lesbian agenda behind the takeover, complete with old photos from a pride event Zaley had attended years ago. Colleagues she once mentored unfollowed her online. At home the silence grew heavier. Zaley found Laura staring at her laptop, researching new cities as if planning an escape. I don't want to lose you to this, Laura said when confronted. But watching you carry their pain alone is breaking me too. They spent the night talking through every decision point. The first time Zaley had come out to her father at 22 and been told it was a phase, the ultimatum that forced her underground, the moment Laura's steady logic had turned evidence into action. By dawn they held each other tighter, the awakening clearer. The price wasn't just external. It was the reshaping of their love under fire. Zaley woke with new resolve. We finish what we started, but we do it together. No more wondering if it's worth it. It has to be, or we both lose. Laura nodded. The romantic bond between them reaffirmed not in grand gestures but in the quiet choice to keep choosing each other amid the ruins. Richard's counterattack arrived via certified letter and a team of lawyers at their door. Breach of fiduciary duty, the documents claimed, alleging Zaley had used insider knowledge gained as his daughter to orchestrate the merger. The betrayal cut deepest when her own godfather, the man who'd toasted her at every birthday, sided publicly with Richard in a press release calling her actions a daughter's ungrateful revenge. Zaley read the statement in their kitchen, the words blurring as the inner conflict she'd thought conquered roared back. Had she become the manipulator her father accused her of being? Laura paced, reading over her shoulder. This is desperation. He's losing the board vote tomorrow. But the personal sting lingered. Zaley remembered summers at the Godfather's lake house, the acceptance she'd felt there before he learned she was dating women. Now even that ally was gone, the social circle she once relied on shrinking to nothing. The media amplified it, framing the story as a family tragedy fueled by identity politics. Protesters returned, louder, and Zaley's phone filled with voicemails from distant relatives disowning her. She met Laura at the Vanguard offices for the final signing. The conference room sterile and impersonal. As pens moved across paper, Zaley felt the weight of every trade-off. The house in the Hamptons she'd never inherit, the Christmas mornings replaced by silence, the version of herself her parents had mourned. I used to think if I just worked harder, proved myself twice as good, they'd see past it, she told Laura afterward on the subway ride home. Now I see they never would. Laura squeezed her hand. And that's the awakening. You stopped waiting for permission. Yet the test came that night when Elaine showed up unannounced, alone this time. Your father had a heart episode again. The doctors say stress from the company collapse. The guilt crashed over Zaley like the gala lights. She almost reached for her coat to go, the daughterly instinct still alive despite everything. Laura stood beside her, silent support. Mom, I didn't cause his health issues. Years of hiding secrets did. Elaine's tears fell freely. He loves you, Zaley. In his way. The words hung, exposing the core dilemma. Was familial love worth the erasure of her truth? Zaley chose to stay home, the decision costing her another piece of her heart. Later, alone with Laura, she voiced the fear. What if I'm no better than him? Hurting people I once loved to protect myself. Laura's answer came steady. You protected us both. The difference is you gave them chances. They never gave you one. The board vote the next day sealed the deal, Vanguard in control. Richard's empire was gone, and Zaley's name was now tied to its fall. Friends who had wavered sent final texts of disappointment. Through it all, Zaley felt the shift. The betrayal had stripped away illusions, leaving only the clear-eyed choice to build something new with Laura. The price had been steep, relationships severed, reputation tainted, but the freedom tasted real for the first time. 6 months later the city had moved on, but Zaley and Laura had not. They stood on the rooftop of their new loft in Queens, the skyline glittering indifferently as Vanguard's integration wrapped. Zaley's role as ethics consultant in the merged company felt earned, not inherited, and Laura's promotion came without whispers. Yet the scars remained. Richard had retired quietly to Florida, refusing contact. Elaine sent occasional cards with no return address. The family gatherings Zaley once dreaded were gone, replaced by quiet dinners for two where no one questioned their love. Zaley traced the railing, remembering the night she'd grabbed the mic and changed everything. I thought winning would feel lighter, she said to Laura. But every time I see a headline about the takeover, I still wonder about the cost. Laura leaned against her, the wind carrying the distant hum of traffic. We paid it together. You didn't just survive, you rewrote the rules. The months had brought small victories. A new circle of friends who celebrated them openly, a joint savings account built on their terms, the slow awakening that family wasn't blood but choice. Zaley had learned to sit with the moral gray. The fraud she'd exposed was real, the pain she'd caused her parents undeniable. Yet in quiet moments she saw the parallel. Her father had chosen image over her truth. She had chosen truth over image. Neither path was clean. Laura turned to face her, eyes soft with the same steady love that had anchored them through protests and lawsuits. We can't undo what we did, but we can live it without regret. Zaley pulled her close, the embrace holding every confrontation, every doubt, every price paid. Below them the city continued, indifferent to their story, but for the first time Zaley felt rooted in her own life, not her father's shadow. The lesbian identity she had once hidden now simply was, no longer a punchline, no longer a weapon. As they watched the sun dip behind the buildings, Zaley realized the real victory wasn't the company or the headlines. It was standing here, unashamed, with the woman who had never asked her to be less. The drama had ended not in triumph or tragedy but in quiet truth. Was Zaley right to publicly dismantle her father's empire to claim her identity and love? Or did the personal and familial destruction mean her choice crossed an unforgivable moral line?